It was just moments ago. The air inside Buckingham Palace felt heavy, almost frozen in disbelief. Cameras were rolling, reporters whispering. And then, King Charles stepped forward. His face said everything before a single word left his lips. What came next left the nation stunned. Two royal names, once etched into the very heart of the monarchy, were suddenly gone. Prince Harry, Prince Andrew, removed from the line of succession. But why now? What pushed Charles to make such a heartbreaking, historic move? Tonight, we unpack the emotion, the politics, and the personal pain behind this royal storm that's shaking the world. Before we dive into this emotional story, make sure you've hit subscribe. It really helps us bring you these breaking royal updates with truth and heart. If you believe the royal family's decisions should always come from honor, tap like, and tell us what you think about Charles's bold move in the comments below. All right, let's begin. It was a quiet morning, the kind that London rarely sees. Overcast skies, soft drizzle kissing the palace gates, and an unusual silence outside Buckingham Palace. But inside, tension was thick enough to taste. Courtiers whispered, advisors shuffled nervously, and all eyes were fixed on one man, King Charles. When the palace clock struck 11, Charles appeared. Dressed in somber tones, he walked toward the podium with a calm yet heavy expression. You could feel it. This wasn't just another statement or ceremonial address. This was something deeper, heavier, something that would change the royal line forever. The cameras zoomed in as Charles took a deep breath. His voice trembled just slightly, not out of weakness, but out of emotion. It is with great sadness, he began, that I must announce adjustments to the royal line of succession. Decisions made not lightly, but in the spirit of duty, integrity, and the future of the crown. A hush swept across the crowd. Journalists froze. No one dared blink. And then came the words that would send shockwaves across the world. Effective immediately, His Royal Highness Prince Andrew and His Royal Highness Prince Harry will be removed from the official line of succession. It was like time stopped. People outside the palace gasped audibly. Even the guards, stoic as stone, seemed to shift in disbelief. Social media erupted within seconds. Harry, Andrew, removed! Every news channel cut live to the palace steps, and anchors spoke with voices caught between disbelief and heartbreak. But as Charles continued, his tone revealed something deeper. Sorrow, yes, but also resolve. This decision, he said quietly, comes not from anger or division, but from the duty I owe to my people, and from the values that must define this monarchy for generations to come. It wasn't just an announcement, it was an emotional reckoning. Now imagine the scene beyond the gates. Fans of the royal family gathered in small groups, clutching umbrellas and phones. Some cried, some shook their heads in quiet shock, and others whispered, it had to happen. Because deep down, many had sensed the tension building, the fractures between tradition and rebellion, between royal image and personal truth. Reporters described the air as electric, as if London itself understood the magnitude of the moment. One veteran royal correspondent said on air, "We've covered decades of royal history, but this feels like the closing of one chapter and the painful beginning of another." And she was right. This wasn't just about protocol. It was about trust, legacy, and image, all colliding under the world's spotlight. Minutes later, the palace issued a carefully worded statement online. Every word was deliberate, each phrase vetted to balance emotion with formality. The king's decision reflects his lifelong commitment to integrity and unity within the monarchy. It read, "It is a step taken to preserve the dignity and purpose of the crown." But behind that carefully crafted language, insiders knew the truth. This had been brewing for months, maybe even years.
Some sources whispered that Charles had struggled with this decision, torn between a father's heart and a king's duty. After all, one of the names on that paper belonged to his youngest son, the boy Diana once called "my little soldier." The same child who once followed behind her coffin in tears. clutching his brother's hand. So what could drive a father, now a king, to such a heartbreaking act? Royal watchers say the writing was on the wall. For Prince Andrew, the storm had long been gathering: scandals, lawsuits, and an irreparable loss of public trust. But for Harry, it was different. His story was laid with love, rebellion, and wounds that never truly healed. His decision to step back from royal life had already drawn invisible lines within the family. But this was the final seal. The line of succession erased his name completely. As the announcement spread, social media became a battleground. #StandWithHarry trended within minutes. Others praised Charles, calling it a necessary step to modernize the monarchy. But everyone agreed on one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. Meanwhile, inside the palace, those close to Charles described the king as visibly emotional, but firm in his resolve. He reportedly spent the night before pacing through the long corridors of Clarence's house, reviewing the statement over and over. One aide recalled him saying softly, "It must be done, for the future." When he finally sat down after the address, his shoulders seemed to slump, not out of exhaustion, but out of quiet heartbreak. A father, a brother, and a king, all inside one man, struggling to balance love and legacy. You could almost imagine him whispering to himself, "Diana, I hope I've done the right thing." Outside, the sound of the royal anthem faded, replaced by the rustle of camera shutters and murmured disbelief. A woman in the crowd, holding a small Union Jack flag, was caught on camera saying tearfully, "It's the end of an era, poor Harry." And in a way, she was right. Because for the first time since the Queen's passing, the monarchy didn't just look fragile, it looked human. This announcement wasn't merely about royal titles or inheritance. It was about boundaries, loyalty, and the painful reality that even within the walls of a palace, family can fracture like any other. The British monarchy, long seen as a fortress of tradition, had just revealed its most human face, one that bleeds, mourns, and still hopes for redemption. As the day ended and the rain returned, Buckingham Palace stood solemn against the grey sky. Reporters packed up, lights dimmed, and the world waited for what would come next. Because every royal story has two sides: the duty seen by millions, and the pain carried in silence. And as the king's car pulled away, you could sense the story was far from over. The question now whispered through every corridor and newsroom: if Charles has taken this step, what comes next for the monarchy? Behind every royal announcement, there's a story the public never sees, a story whispered through corridors, written between lines, and carried in the hearts of those who serve closest to the crown. And when it comes to King Charles' shocking decision, palace insiders say the tension had been building quietly for months, maybe even years. It didn't happen overnight. This was the slow burn of conflict, duty, and heartbreak that had been simmering since the late Queen's final days. It began, some say, after the Queen's passing, when Charles finally took the throne he had waited his entire life to inherit. He wanted to be a different kind of monarch, more transparent, more modern, more human. But with that came a painful realization: the crown, like a family, couldn't carry everyone forever. From the very start of his reign, Charles faced immense pressure, both from Parliament and from the people. There were growing questions about the cost of the monarchy, about public trust, and about the scandals that had clouded its image. And two names came up more than any others: Andrew and Harry. Both men, once beloved sons of the royal house, had become lightning rods for controversy. Andrew's past was a shadow that refused to fade. His ties, his interviews, his withdrawal from public life, all of it had stained the monarchy's reputation. Every time his name resurfaced, so did the anger. Harry's case, though, was far more emotional. His exit from royal life, the interviews, the memoir, all of it painted the family as fractured and fragile. For Charles, it wasn't just about protocol anymore. It was about survival, of both the monarchy and his own legacy. Those closest to the king described a growing tension behind palace doors. Private meetings stretched late into the night. Legal advisors, constitutional experts, even the Archbishop of Canterbury was said to be consulted. And through it all, Charles wrestled with the same haunting question. Can I be both father and king? It's said he often confided in Queen Camilla, the woman who had seen him through his darkest storms. One insider recalled hearing her tell him softly, "Do what must be done, not what feels right in the heart, but what is right for the crown." It wasn't cold advice. It was the truth of the throne, where love and duty rarely walk hand in hand. Then came the turning point. In early autumn, a senior royal aide reportedly presented Charles with polling data showing that public confidence in the monarchy had dropped sharply, especially among younger generations. The report was blunt. Until accountability is restored and the crown distances itself from scandal, faith in the monarchy will continue to erode. For a man who had waited 70 years to prove himself, that hit hard. Charles knew he couldn't afford hesitation. He had to act. And so, over a series of confidential meetings, the king made his most difficult decision since taking the throne, to remove both Andrew and Harry from the official line of succession. It wasn't punishment. It was preservation. But behind closed doors, emotions ran high. Harry reportedly received a private call from his father weeks before the public announcement. Those close to him say the conversation was short, quiet, and filled with pauses, the kind of silence only a wounded heart can produce. One source shared that Charles said gently, "You will always be my son, but the monarchy must stand apart from pain." Harry didn't respond for several seconds. When he finally did, his voice was heavy. "So this is goodbye then, officially." Charles didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than any words. Meanwhile, Andrew's reaction was reportedly more defiant. Sources close to him say he believed he had already paid his dues and was seeking quiet rehabilitation within the family. The announcement, to him, was a betrayal, a final severing of the last thread connecting him to public royal life. He allegedly told a friend, "After all I've done for this family, they've cast me out like a ghost." But in truth, many within the palace believed this step was long overdue. Even Prince William, though deeply saddened by his father's burden, was said to have quietly supported the move, seeing it as an act of responsibility rather than cruelty. "It's about protecting the future," one insider quoted him as saying. Still, the emotional toll on Charles was immense. Imagine being a man who spent decades fighting for respect, finally achieving the crown, only to be forced to cut ties with your own blood to preserve it. In one particularly telling moment, a staff member reportedly saw Charles standing alone in the palace garden late one evening, staring out at the distant lights of London. When asked if he was all right, he simply said, "It never feels like victory." Those 5 words captured everything: the loneliness of leadership, the heartbreak of fatherhood, and the quiet truth that duty often costs more than it gives. And yet, beneath the sorrow, there was purpose. The king's advisors described him as a man who, though grieving, believed he was doing what his mother would have wanted, restoring order and integrity to the crown. He even carried a small handwritten note from Queen Elizabeth, framed on his desk, where she once wrote, "The crown must always serve, not be served by, those who bear its name." Perhaps that was a reminder that pushed him to take this painful step, to remind the world that being royal isn't a birthright alone, it's a lifelong responsibility. By the time the palace press office drafted the final wording of the announcement, Charles had made peace with his choice. He read the statement one last time, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Let it be done." And from that moment, history changed course. What began as whispers of tension had finally erupted into a royal earthquake, one that would shake not only the monarchy's image but the hearts of a family still haunted by love, loss, and legacy. The decision was final, but the fallout was only just beginning. The morning after the announcement, the world felt different. Across London, newspapers carried one headline: bold, unflinching, and painful. Harry and Andrew out. King's decision rewrites royal history. In Montecito, California, the news reached Prince Harry before dawn. He was reportedly in the garden when his phone buzzed with the alert. A single glance at the headline, and he knew it wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real. For a long moment, he didn't move. Meghan came out with a cup of coffee, her expression softening the instant she saw his face. "Charles," she asked quietly. He nodded. "It's official." The silence that followed said everything. Harry wasn't angry. At least, not at first. He looked more hollow. This wasn't just about losing a title. It was about losing the final thread connecting him to the life he'd once known. The world of his mother, the world of his childhood, the world he'd walked away from, but still carried in his heart. Later that morning, reporters spotted him driving alone along the California coast, windows down, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. No official statement came from his spokesperson. No posts, no comments, just silence. But palace insiders say his private reaction was deeply emotional. One friend revealed he felt like he'd been erased, not punished, but deleted. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, a very different storm was brewing inside Royal Lodge, Prince Andrew's residence. When the news broke, Andrew was reportedly furious. He'd been warned, yes, but never believed the king would actually go through with it. He thought Charles was bluffing, one longtime aide said. He always assumed the family would protect him, no matter what. But this time, there were no exceptions. Andrew's reaction was said to be explosive. Sources described shouting behind closed doors, phones slammed on desks, and an atmosphere so tense that staff avoided the room entirely. He reportedly told one advisor, "They can't erase me from my own bloodline." But of course, they could, and they had. By noon, Buckingham Palace's phone lines were overwhelmed. Calls from press, MPs, and even foreign ambassadors poured in, seeking clarity. Inside the communications office, the mood was clinical, focused, as if emotion had no place left in the day's work. But elsewhere in the royal circle, feelings were raw. Prince William, ever composed in public, was said to have stayed silent that entire morning. Insiders claim he privately understood his father's choice, even respected it, but he also felt the heavy sadness of knowing that family bonds had once again been sacrificed to protect the institution. He reportedly told a close friend, "Sometimes being royal means losing more than you gain." Then came the public reaction. The UK was divided, as always when it comes to royal matters. Some saw Charles act as brave, a line finally drawn in the sand. Others saw it as cruel, a father turning his back on his son and brother. Television debates filled every channel. Royal commentators spoke in solemn tones. Analysts dissected the implications, and the world watched the monarchy like a family drama unfolding in real time. And yet, beneath the noise, there was empathy. For every harsh opinion, there was a voice saying, "They are still human." One elderly woman interviewed outside the palace summed it up simply. "They carry crowns, but they also carry hearts. And hearts break the same." For Harry, the following days were a blur. Friends said he withdrew into family life, spending time with Meghan and their children, avoiding the media. He reportedly told one confidant, "If this brings him peace, then so be it. I just hope he remembers, I never wanted war." But the pain ran deep. Those who knew him said he had long accepted being the spare, but being removed, officially, publicly, was something else entirely. It was final. It was irreversible. And in the quiet of that California evening, Harry was said to have looked through an old box of his mother's letters, notes Diana had written during his Eton years. One read simply, "You are loved beyond the palace walls." That line stayed with him. Andrew, however, took a different path. While Harry sought reflection, Andrew sought redemption, or rather, vindication. Within days, reports surfaced that he had consulted lawyers not to fight the decision legally, but to demand a fair explanation. But deep down, most knew that chapter was closed. Even Charles' most loyal staff admitted privately that there was no turning back. "It's done," one aide said flatly. "The king will not revisit this. The crown must move forward." Still, Andrew couldn't let go. Friends said he felt abandoned, left behind by an institution he had served for decades. But what he failed to see was that public trust, once broken, cannot be rebuilt by royal privilege alone. As for Charles, the days following the announcement were marked by silence, not avoidance, but introspection. He carried himself with his usual dignity in public, attending engagements, greeting crowds, smiling gently for cameras. But those close to him described a man haunted by both relief and regret. Duty doesn't free you, one insider said. It just binds you differently. Late one night, Charles was overheard speaking quietly to Camilla in the palace library. He said, "It feels as though every crown comes with a cost I never wanted to pay." She didn't answer. She just reached over, took his hand, and whispered, "History will understand you." And maybe that's the truth. Because every royal generation faces its reckoning, a moment when the past demands accountability, and the future demands courage. For Charles, that moment has come. For Harry and Andrew, it has passed, leaving behind questions that may never truly be answered. But one thing is certain. The monarchy, long seen as a symbol of unshakable continuity, has now revealed something unexpected: its capacity for heartbreak. The world saw a king make a decision, but behind the ceremony, it was a father saying goodbye. In the days that followed, Buckingham Palace stood quieter than ever. The flags still waved, the guard still changed, and yet something felt different. The monarchy, one of the oldest institutions on earth, had just redrawn its own bloodline. And in that silence, a question echoed through Britain. What does this mean for the future? For Charles, it wasn't about revenge. It was about renewal. He knew that the monarchy could no longer survive on tradition alone. It had to be rebuilt, not as a symbol of perfection, but as a reflection of honesty, humility, and service. Those close to him say he now spends long evenings reviewing letters from citizens, reading their hopes and criticisms alike. Some thank him for having courage. Others plead for reconciliation. But through it all, one message rings clear. The world no longer sees the crown as untouchable. It sees it as human. And maybe, for Charles, that's the truest kind of strength. Inside the palace, the line of succession looks simpler now, clearer, cleaner. Prince William stands next in line, his role more defined than ever. Behind him, young Prince George, the future of a new generation, unaware of the weight already written into his name. It's a monarchy evolving in real time, with each generation forced to adapt to the pressures of a modern world that never sleeps, never forgets, and never forgives easily. One royal historian put it best. This is not the end of the monarchy. It's the beginning of its most honest chapter yet. But for Charles, honesty comes with loneliness. He's said to walk the palace corridors at night, pausing by portraits, his mother, his sons, even Diana. He sometimes lingers in front of a photograph, lips moving in what looks like prayer. He still talks to her. One aide confessed softly, not out loud, but in his heart. It's easy to forget that kings are also fathers, that beneath the gold and the grandeur are men who still wonder if they've done the right thing. And so, every decision Charles makes now carries the weight of both the crown and the cradle, of history and heartbreak intertwined. Meanwhile, Prince William and Princess Catherine have quietly stepped forward. Their presence feels like stability in motion, steady, modern, and calm. They represent the monarchy Charles wants to leave behind, one grounded in empathy rather than expectation. They are seen more often now, visiting communities, connecting with ordinary people, showing that royalty isn't just about titles, it's about presence. William, insiders say, has grown closer to his father since the decision. He understands the burden one courtier shared. Is preparing for it too. And Catherine, graceful as ever, has become the emotional anchor for both men, holding the fragile balance of family and future together in quiet strength. Outside the palace, public opinion continues to evolve. The monarchy isn't perfect, and perhaps it never will be. But in its imperfections, people are finding something new: relatability. Because for once, the royal family isn't just a symbol of luxury and tradition. It's a story of forgiveness, reform, and resilience, one that mirrors the struggles of countless families around the world who have faced betrayal, loss, and love that's hard to hold on to. The crown, it seems, is not just about power anymore. It's about people. And so, as the world looks toward the future, the royal family stands at a crossroads. Charles' reign will likely be remembered not for its length, but for its courage. The courage to make painful decisions, to face uncomfortable truths, and to rebuild something ancient with modern hands. Time will tell if history sees this as an act of division or redemption. But one thing is certain, the monarchy's heart beats differently now. No longer a family untouchable, but a family that bleeds, heals, and continues, as all families must. As the sun sets over Buckingham Palace, the final scene feels almost poetic. Charles stands at the window, the evening light reflecting off the golden frames that hold generations of royal portraits. His alone, but not defeated. His older, but wiser. And as he looks out at the crowds gathered beyond the gates, he whispers the quiet truth every monarch must face. The crown endures, but only if the heart beneath it remains human. And that is the emotional story behind the king's heartbreaking decision. A father, a brother, a son, forced to choose between love and duty. What do you think? Was Charles right to make this decision for the future of the monarchy, or should family always come before the crown? Share your thoughts below. We read every comment with care. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more heartfelt royal updates, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss when history unfolds again. Because in the royal family, every silence hides a story, and every story deserves to be told, with truth, with heart, and with humanity.